Okay, welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Dr. Tony DeLangel coming to you from the Gonstead Unfiltered podcast. Today we have an amazing show, and I got to tell you, I got a story to tell you. But before we get into that, let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. What that means, and that was a saying by Hippocrates a long, long time ago. And somehow we have strayed away from that, and today we're going to talk about it because I got a hell of a story for you. It's kind of an embarrassing story, actually, but we're going to talk about it because if my embarrassment helps you improve the quality of your life, then so be it. That's why we're here. But before, folks, I just got to say, you know, it gets harder and harder to do these podcasts, and every single time I do these podcasts, guys, the questions that come out afterwards, the emails and just the responses, some of you guys, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. You know, as time gets busier, we're getting ready to open up our third clinic now. And, you know, the goal is to get to the masses, folks. We want to have 10 clinics in the next 10 years. And in order to do that, I really kind of had to step away from patient care just to make sure that we can scale this thing to the level that we want to get it to. So thank you guys for reaching out and just giving me some insight as to what you're struggling with. Thank you for the questions. It really does kind of stimulate my mind too, as far as what we can talk about. So let's get into it. Let food be thy medicine, and let medicine be thy food. And folks, that's the honest truth. We knew this thousands of years ago. Really, we really did know this. The hard part is with big TV and all these other people, big pharma, they're painting this picture in our mind where they think, or they're persuading us, I should say, that we can only survive off of medications. We can only survive off of taking a pill for something, and that is so far from the truth, folks. And so here we are. I got to talk about some of this stuff so that way we can kind of get you to unthink and not follow the masses, not follow the sheep, if you will. And so, folks, we have a 98% success rate in our office when patients follow through with the process. Every successful business needs to have a proven process so we can show patients exactly how are we going to go about this to get you that piece of your life back that you've been looking for. 98%. And even if it's 98%, one of our core values is excellence. And what we mean by excellence is we're always hungry for achievement. We're always striving for growth. And even though we work hard, we're never satisfied because we're constantly striving for growth. We're constantly striving. And so here's the thing. When patients get better, great. We're going to celebrate it. We're going to celebrate you. But the reality is it's right back to work, because there's so many people out there. And that's why we want to scale Gonstead Physical Medicine across the country. And the reason why is so that way we can get to the masses. You know, you get to a point in life where you start to serve a certain purpose. And when patients get better, great. And I can stay in a room and we can get a handful of patients better, or we can teach and we can scale it and we can get to communities, we can get to states, we can get to the country. That's how you start to change the way healthcare is delivered so people don't have to suffer anymore. So let me tell you a story. Let me tell you about how this came out. Folks, we have a 98% success rate, but again, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. So what happens with those 2%? If patients are doing everything they can, they're listening to everything we say, they're fully committed to what they're doing, and they take their health seriously, and they're still not getting better, we are missing something. So let me tell you the story. This was, honestly, this was probably about 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago. Somewhere around that area there. I was dealing with a ton of joint pain, but it wasn't like your average like back pain or neck pain. It wasn't like that. I was having some joint pain in my fingers. I was having pain in my knees, my feet, my shoulders. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I work out, I do all this stuff. And for a while there, I was like, maybe it is my age. And so it started with joint pain, and then it went to sleep. No matter what I could do, I was trying to do everything. I was taking cold baths before I went to bed. I was doing hot showers before I went to bed. I was trying to focus on meditating and breathing, and I was doing all these things, and I still wouldn't sleep. I'd fall asleep, But it was always probably around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I would always wake up and never go back to sleep. Then you guys ever have those conversations where you're talking with somebody and you're having a conversation with them and all of a sudden you completely forget what you're talking about? Now, I'm getting older, but I'm not that old. Okay, I'll still put up a good fight. But the thing is, how the hell am I forgetting what I'm saying in the middle of my conversation? And my wife would always tell me, you know what, you're so busy and that's probably why you're just forgetting. Like, you know, you have people who love you and they want to make you feel better. But the reality is, deep down inside, I knew something wasn't right. I was having these memory issues. I was getting exhausted, you know, midday. Like normally I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I go to bed at 9. That's just kind of how my day is. And from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed, there's always something to do. That's just how life is. Well, I started to experience maybe around like noon, 1 o'clock, just feeling exhausted and then bloated. Like what was crazy is, you know, one of my favorite meals is just steak. I love steak. And it got to a point where I would have a bite or two and not even feel hungry anymore. I just felt completely full. I always felt like I was bloated. I felt like I couldn't put any more food down my throat because there was no space. That's kind of how the perception that I had. And so I went to the doctor finally, and you know, I was like, hey, this is what's going on. I don't know what the hell's going on, but I work out all the time. I'm constantly on the go. And so the doctor did all the tests and he comes back and says, well, there's nothing wrong. And so for those of you patients out there who know what I'm talking about with this, you can go to the doctor. You know, internally something is wrong. Something is not right. And when you have somebody tell you you're fine, you're normal, like we have patients come in and they're in all this pain and they've been everywhere and they're so sick and tired of doctors telling them there's nothing wrong. It's in your head, right? And I tell you, folks, I can definitely, I have compassion for you because when I went through this experience, it was the most frustrating thing. The difference is I am that pain in the ass patient, okay? And so when a doctor tells me something that is not in alignment with what I know, then I'm gonna question him. I'm going to ask questions. And I'm going to keep asking questions until you give me a reasonable answer. And doctors don't like that. You know, if you start asking questions and now all of a sudden you're a nuisance to them. And that's a problem. So when patients come into our office, we make it a policy. If you're not asking questions, I'm not doing my job, because you should be so curious about your health that you should be asking me all sorts of questions. And if you're not, this is probably not the best place for you, because we want patients who care about themselves. We want patients who literally want to improve some aspect of their life so they don't have to suffer anymore. And typically it's the patient who hits their rock bottom. When you hit your rock bottom, you're willing to do whatever it takes to change because you're tired of suffering. Those are the patients we want. But those are also the patients that typically have a lot of questions. Hey, what about this? What about this? I just had a consult with a patient and it was about an hour long, but he had a ton of questions about his gut health and things like that, and nutrition and all this other stuff. And I'm like, this is the kind of person that we want in this office. That's how you know that person's going to get better, because they care. So I went through this entire process. I wasn't satisfied with the answer. Long story short, I was a pain in the ass patient to the doctor. It wasn't good enough. I never saw the doctor again. I actually fired the doctor as my doctor. And I had to seek my own answers. So I started looking online, just like everyone else does. I started looking into Dr. Google, and I'm starting to figure out ways like, why do I feel full all the time? Why am I bloated all the time? Why am I having memory issues? Why do I have joint pain all over the place? And so it was, you know, by the grace of God, I sought out like gut health testing. I'm a medical provider. I can do testing on myself. So what did we do? I reached out, got a gut health test, and then there was a medical provider out in Georgia. And I started kind of listening to what she had to say. I started and kind of interpret everything, how she was looking at things. And so finally I reached out to her. Folks, like, there's always an answer, okay? So the thing is, with whatever problem you have, there is always a solution, and sometimes that solution is very difficult to find, but don't give up. I'm telling you my own personal experience. You cannot give up on your health when it comes to suffering, because the reality is nobody's coming to save you, okay? And so the only way that you can actually seek true health is by seeking it out yourself. So that's what I did. I reached out to her, I did the gut health test, I got my report, I sent it to her, and she spent like the next hour and a half breaking things down. And so before we even got into that, she started talking about just healthcare and the way it is. And we just, it was more of a friendly conversation between colleagues. And she was like, you know what, I'm just sick and tired of the way the medical outlook on things are. If you take a test and you fall within the normal range of that test, you're considered normal. But deep down inside, we know you're not normal. And so she had a similar experience for herself. So she spent an hour and a half with me, and I truly valued like everything that she said. It was amazing. But she went through everything. So she spent the rest of the time basically telling me that the good bacteria in my gut was non-existent or it was really low. The bad bacteria in my gut was overgrowing exponentially. I was gluten intolerant. I had H. pylori. I had this massive inflammatory reaction in my gut that was eroding the lining of my gut. So every single toxin that I was either eating, breathing, or drinking, or anything like that, every single toxin, instead of passing through my gut, would actually seep through the lining, the holes in the lining of my gut, getting into my bloodstream. And when things go into your bloodstream, folks, all hell breaks loose. All hell breaks loose. So this gut health test kit, what it did is it measured the inflammatory response in my gut. It was like off the roof. You had this scale, and it was completely on the far right of the scale, meaning that there was a massive reaction. And I didn't even know I was gluten intolerant, folks. I was eating, any bread, tortillas, things like that. Any of that stuff that you don't think is affecting you until later on. It was massively eroding the lining of my gut. And so the lining of your gut, you should have this mucus layer on the inside of the gut that kind of protects you from any toxins getting through that lining and into your bloodstream. And what ended up happening is, over the course of time, that inflammation started to erode the lining of my gut, and to the point where there was no lining anymore. So anything I ate, I breathed in, or I was drinking, would eventually go into the bloodstream. Once it hits the bloodstream, it can go anywhere in your body. So now I got all these toxins in my body. That would explain why I have joint pain in my fingers, my shoulders, my knees, my feet. And I'm like, I'm not even abusive to some of these areas. Why does it hurt? Even when after I exercise or do all this stuff, like why just do I have this joint pain that's just kind of all over? When you have low back pain and it's localized to one area, okay, maybe there's an injury there. But when you start having pain all over, kind of like fibromyalgia, and everybody says there's no reason, or they can't really identify what causes fibromyalgia. When things get into your bloodstream from a toxic standpoint and it goes all over, folks, that's a massive inflammatory reaction throughout your entire body. Now, you also have something called a blood-brain barrier. It's a barrier, literally, that prevents toxins from getting into your brain. As you guys can imagine, if you get toxins in your brain, bad things are going to happen. Things like memory problems, things like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, things, those neurological diseases that we're seeing exponentially grow in the world today. But everybody says, well, it's a genetic thing. Folks, there's like 1%, not even 1%, of diseases out there today that are actually truly genetic. The rest of the stuff is familial, meaning that it's what you and your family have eaten for generations. If your grandparents are obese and your parents are obese, the chances of you being obese are pretty likely. So somehow we have to break that cycle to figure out How do we change this? Can we turn genes on? Of course we can turn genes on. But let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. So I had to go through this process, okay? The first thing, okay, I had bad bacteria that was overgrowing. I had good bacteria that wasn't even there. I had gluten intolerance, and I also had a leaky gut syndrome where the lining of my gut was eroded so badly that things were passing through the bloodstream and getting everywhere. That would explain a lot of the stuff that I had going on. Okay, I remember when I was talking to the doctor, he was like, well, you probably have, this is where he got pissed at me. You probably have acid reflux. And he wanted to put me on a prescription to reduce acid production. I said, hold on, wait a second. The majority of time when people have stomach trouble, are they not producing too little acid? It's a lack of acid production. It's not an overproduction of acid. He didn't like that because I challenged him. He wanted to put me on something. Let's just say I took some type of antacid, right? I took some type of acid lowering medication. If I'm stressed, if I have, if I'm not producing enough acid in my gut, then any food that I eat is gonna sit there and basically rot. And then the organic acid production from the food rotting, maybe that's what's coming up. Maybe that's why I feel like I had acid reflux. So he wanted to put me on something that would lower the acid production even more, which just means that the food is gonna sit there and rot even more. You wanna get real disgusting right now, folks? All the bad gas that you may be experiencing, it's probably because things are rotting in your stomach. Think about this. So, again, didn't like it, but I had to kind of seek my own health. I had to seek it out for myself. Luckily, I found this medical provider in Georgia, and she was able to help me significantly. So anyways, we had to go through several stages of this, okay? The first thing is I had to kill the bad stuff. I can take in all the probiotics and I can take in all the healthy stuff that I want, but if that bad stuff is still there, it doesn't matter. Okay, and if I have to go through a kill stage and I have to kill that bad bacteria, it doesn't make any sense to try to put good stuff in just yet because I'm going to kill the good stuff also. So we had to go through about a month and a half, maybe 2 months of killing the bad stuff. First and foremost, kill the bad stuff, get rid of the bad stuff. So we did that. And immediately I started feeling better. I was like, hey, this is great. And I remember when I spoke with, she was a nurse practitioner, I spoke with her and I said, I feel great, like this is great. And she's like, we just killed stuff. Now you have to repair and you have to replenish. And I was like, well, what do you mean? She goes, now that you killed off the bad stuff, that's great, but now you have to regenerate tissue, you have to reseal the lining of the gut, you have to replace all that good bacteria that was missing, now we have to put that good bacteria back. And I was like, well, yeah, you're right. That does make sense. Okay, so how do we do that? And I'm thinking to myself, I have to buy supplements and I got to do all these things. And yeah, I had to do that. But the reality is, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So what do? We talked about things like bone broth. Bone broth helps helping to seal the lining of our gut. We talked about homemade applesauce and the pectin from the applesauce helping to seal the lining of the gut. We talked about other things as far as like good prebiotic foods, asparagus and some of the green leafy or root vegetables, things like rutabaga and beets and carrots and things like that. And I was like, man, I hate beets because they taste like dirt. But my wife came up with a really good recipe. She sliced them up, she sauteed them, and I think it was like either some type of olive oil or coconut oil or something like that, and then I don't know, something with the seasoning. I don't even know what she did with it, to be honest. I just eat. But anyways, those were the things that will help feed the good bacteria. So let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food. And so we did that. And we started eating certain things. I had to eliminate all gluten. Okay, so this was my routine back in the day, folks. And I know a lot of you guys can reason with this. When you go all day long and your mind goes into problem solving mode, literally 16 hours a day. When you have to do that, when you want to go home, you want to shut down. So what was my way of shutting down back then? Have a glass of wine with dinner. Little did I know that I was literally putting a carpet bomb on all the good bacteria in my gut by dropping that alcohol into my gut, and that's what led to a lot of the bloating. So literally, it's like even a glass, folks, listen to your body. If like you have something to eat or drink and all of a sudden you just bloat up, your body's telling you something, okay? You just got to figure out what it is. For me, it was the wine. So I had to eliminate all gluten. And not only all gluten, but you got to check the gluten in the sauces. I mean, my gut was so eroded, and a lot of it was from that gluten insensitivity. There was such a high immune reaction in my gut that I had to do something. So what we did, we took all of that out. Basically, what I was eating was fruits, vegetables, meat. If it came from a tree, if it came from the ground, or if it came from an animal, that's what I ate. That was it. So literally, everything that I had to eat had no more than 1 or 2 ingredients in it, and that was it, folks. And it took some time. It took about 3 months to really heal the lining of the gut. I was doing the bone broth. I was doing the homemade applesauce. And I was taking in colostrum. So what a lot of people didn't know, and I didn't know this, was that every baby has leaky gut. And once they start nursing, it's the colostrum from mother's milk that helps seal the lining of the baby's gut. I thought that was pretty damn cool. Like nature at its best. God knows exactly what we need. So I found a source of colostrum. And what's crazy about this is I got it online as like a liquid milk source, and had it for a while. I think people caught on with colostrum, you know, maybe 3-4 years ago, where they realized how well it was sealing or helping people with leaky gut syndrome, that it's like, I can't even go to the website that I went to because it's always sold out now. So I had to get a powdered form of it in the form of a supplement. And I just need to make sure that I'm hydrated, I'm getting into the sun and doing some other things to help turn those building blocks actually into something that will work. And so, and colostrum, so that was helping to heal the lining of the gut. So every day, 1 cup of bone broth. Every single day, some like a couple spoonfuls of apple cider, applesauce. And then colostrum every single day. Plus, I was taking the supplement version or for L-glutamine. I was taking something called GI Revive. Things that would help build the lining of the gut. I was taking constant vegetables. Things that will help serve as like a prebiotic to feed my good gut bacteria. And then I was taking a high dose of probiotics. And so what you guys may not know is we have trillions of probiotics in our guts. Like we have trillions of healthy bacteria in our gut, okay? So when we go to the grocery store and we find this probiotic that maybe has like 5 billion CFUs, colony forming units per day, that's not even gonna put a dent in it. So the largest amount that I've seen in a supplement form is I think 100 billion CFUs. And even then, like you'd have to take at least 4 of those. You know, you may have a 30-day supply in a box. That box may cost you 60, 70 bucks. And you got to do 4 of those, so that's really like a 2-week supply. That can get extremely expensive. So we find, you know, I had to find, okay, what is a probiotic out there that has anywhere from like 18 to 20 different strains, and these specific strains that were pretty much non-existent in my gut, I needed to find that. And I was able to find that. And then I found a source where it gave 450 billion CFUs per day. Now all of a sudden you can start to put a dent in things. Plus we're adding in those prebiotic vegetables. Plus we have the I keep saying that, applesauce. Plus we have the colostrum. Plus we have the bone broth. I eliminated all gluten, eliminated all alcohol. And before you know it, all of a sudden my stomach shrunk. And what's cool about this is most of us go to the gym because maybe we feel like our stomachs are distended and we're getting heavy. And then all of a sudden when your gut reaction, when that inflammation goes down and you no longer have this massive immune reaction, you realize that wasn't fat. We were just bloated. There was a huge inflammatory reaction going on in my gut that I didn't know about. All of a sudden, my sleeping got better. all of a sudden my joint pain went away completely. My memory came back. Folks, this is scary. I'm telling you, because this is the world today. This is kind of how it starts. If you look at the spectrum as far as like how this happens, you got to start asking yourself these questions. Okay, it starts with like sleeping problems. Then you start to have some joint pain, but it's like joint pain that, it's not enough to really grasp your attention, but it's enough to say, like, why do I just kind of have joint pain all over? Then it leads to things like memory issues, where you start to say, you're having the conversation and then all of a sudden you forget what you said. And it's easy to say, oh, well, you're just busy, you're stressed, or whatever the case is. Folks, take that stuff seriously. It could start off as bloating or constipation or diarrhea. Then all of a sudden, you're going to different healthcare providers, and you're going to the chiropractor, you're going to the physical therapist, you're going to a massage therapist or an acupuncturist or the medical doctor or whoever. And nobody's communicating with each other, but you're not seeing results. And you're not seeing results, and you're hurting all over, and you're having these memory issues, and you're bloated, and you're not really hungry, even if you don't eat for a while. When you get to that point, it's just this progression where all of a sudden it leads to chronic disease. Then there comes the diabetes. Then there comes the Alzheimer's, the dementia, the Parkinson's, all of these different things out there. Then it leads to joint surgeries or disc replacements or knee replacements or shoulder replacements. We have all these problems, and we never got to the root cause of the problem. So I find it extremely hard to believe that when patients come through here, we have a 98% success rate. And when patients follow through our process where we discover what's going on first, then we revive the tissue by breaking up scar tissue so water can go back through the tissue. Then we restore the length of the tissue and restore the elasticity of the tissue. And then we build stability through the movement patterns that the patient wants to get through so they can enjoy their life again. So if they want to run, we got to teach them how to be stable while running. 98% success. But if they are not responding and they still have joint pain all over, they have the memory problems, they have the bloating, they're having sleeping problems, and I would even put in anxiety and depression in there too, folks. When your body knows that it's not at a point of homeostasis or balance, all of a sudden there comes the anxiety. All of a sudden there comes the anger. All of a sudden you have the depression. There's always an answer to what's going on. Very rarely is it in your head. So we at Gonstead Physical Medicine are not going to give up on you. If we're missing something, we're going to be humble enough and say, listen, we're missing something. We need to do this. And the first place we go to now is the gut. Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. The gut plays a role in everything. Your immune system is in your gut. So we can focus on joints. We can focus on muscles, tendons, ligaments, fascial tissue, whatever. We can focus on all that. Discs, cartilage. We can focus on movement. And if you're still not responding, we're missing the solution. And the majority of the time when we hit that point, it's the gut testing that we have to go to. And the majority of the time, it's usually the good bacteria is non-existent, the bad bacteria is overgrowing. A lot of times, like gluten intolerance is becoming a thing, folks. Like it is rampant right now. And the gut lining is completely eroded. So everything is passing through our gut and getting into the bloodstream and completely destroying our bodies. And it's a slow process until death. I'm not going to sugarcoat that for you either, folks, because that's exactly what it leads to. So when people, and all of us have these people, we have parents, we have grandparents, we have family, we have friends. As they get older, we watch them suffer. I can't tell you how many patients that we have had over 20 years now, how many patients we had to watch suffer until they die. Because we failed for many years not addressing the root cause of the issue. If you can't tell how serious I am about this stuff, and if you're struggling and things aren't getting better, no matter if you're with us or with somebody else, the reality is the root cause is not being addressed. The next step needs to be go towards the gut. Assess the gut to see What is the good bacteria doing? What is the bad bacteria doing? Are there parasites? Is there fungus? Is there yeast? Are there worms? Are you gluten intolerant? What's the immune system doing in your gut? Do you have leaky gut syndrome? And if all of that is there, you have to address it. You have to. For some of you who are in the office, maybe you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. If you're 50 years old, that's 50 years of just buildup that's been eroding your gut for that long. And now we have to make this change of improving the quality of your life. That's how you get that piece of your life back that you're looking for, by getting to the root cause of the problem. This is why we operate the way we do. So folks, again, every single time we do these podcasts, I always get questions afterwards. Always feel free to reach out to us at any point. The goal is to expand to the masses so that way we can help more people and give them that piece of their life back so they don't have to suffer anymore. So folks, if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us. And if you get a chance, we ask that you please just share this. Share this with somebody who's suffering with chronic pain. Share this with somebody who has that gut or memory issue or any way, shape, or form that they are suffering. We ask that you share this information with them. This is how we get across to the masses. So folks, thank you. I appreciate all of the feedback that you have given us. And again, until next time, folks, we'll see you then.